Jeremy Bentham. He wasn't just a philosopher in fancy coats. He was a man obsessed with order. Born in London in 1748, child prodigy, reading Latin at 3, university at 12, and by 20 he was trying to redesign society itself. Bentham believed that people naturally chase pleasure and avoid pain, so the best society is the one that arranges rewards and punishments so perfectly that we all behave almost automatically. That's where his most chilling idea came in, the Panopticon. In the 1790s, Bentham proposed a circular prison where a single, unseen guard could watch every inmate. The prisoners never knew when the guard's eye was on them, so they would behave as if they were always being watched. Bentham thought this constant visibility would make society more efficient, fair, and self-regulating. No beatings, no chaos, just permanent self-control. He called the design a new mode of obtaining moral reform through architecture. It wasn't just for prisons. He imagined it for schools, hospitals, even factories. Cheaper to run, easier to discipline. The Panopticon was never fully built in his lifetime, but its logic outlived him. Every security camera, every tracking app, every digital trace follows the same principle. When surveillance becomes invisible and continuous, people police themselves. Modern thinkers like Michel Foucault later called Bentham's idea the blueprint of modern power. The reason why so many of us behave online is if someone's always watching. Bentham died in 1832, but his preserved body, literally sitting on display at University College London, is still being observed, fittingly, by millions of eyes.
Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, born in Stuttgart in 1770, spent his life trying to explain how human freedom grows through history. He believed the self can't exist in isolation. It's shaped by constant recognition from others. A person only knows who they are through interaction, through being seen. In his Phenomenology of Spirit, he described this as the master-slave dialectic, where identity arises from struggle and mutual awareness. Because of that, private individuality without social visibility is unfinished. Hegel imagined a society where reason and transparency fuse. The individual becomes real only inside the moral life of the community, what he called Sittlichkeit. Privacy, in that framework, is less virtue than incompleteness. Truth happens when the personal and public unite. His philosophy later fueled ideas about modern bureaucracy, nationalism, and even social media's hunger for validation. In every post and profile, we confirm our existence to someone else. Whether he'd cheer or cringe at that outcome, Hegel taught us that we become ourselves only when others can see us.
Friedrich Nietzsche, born in 1844 in Germany, declared that every great idea begins with honesty, especially honesty about the self. He despised empty virtue and saw secrecy as a breeding ground for weakness and resentment. To him, hiding behind moral codes or polite masks kills vitality. In works like Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche called for individuals to live dangerously, to show their drives openly rather than repress them. He urged humanity to step into the sunlight, exposing instincts instead of pretending they don't exist. In that sense, privacy looked like cowardice, a refusal to own one's truth. His vision wasn't about surveillance, but liberation. When you stop hiding, you stop lying. Modern culture turned parts of this into radical transparency, where online authenticity becomes a badge of power. Nietzsche's challenge endures. If we value strength and self-creation, can any part of us truly stay private?
Karl Marx, born in 1818 in Trier, Germany, built a philosophy that dissolved the boundary between personal and collective life. He saw private, anything, property, wealth, interest, as the root of inequality. In his early writings with Engels, Marx warned that private ownership lets a few isolate the means of production from the many. When he pictured a classless society, privacy itself looked like a symptom of separation. He believed human beings are inherently social. Freedom comes not from retreating into private life, but from sharing in common labor and goals. The famous slogan, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs, is also an attack on the myth of the isolated self. Industrial capitalism multiplied secrets, trade secrets, private profits, fenced-off capital. Marx predicted those walls would one day collapse under collective power. Whether or not his revolution arrived, the digital age he couldn't imagine, where data flows and property lines blur, has ironically pushed the world closer to his vision of privacy's end.
Sigmund Freud, born in 1856 in the Austrian Empire, cracked open the idea that our minds are private sanctuaries. Before him, people believed thoughts and desires could be hidden even from ourselves. Freud shattered that comfort. Through psychoanalysis, he claimed that dreams, slips of the tongue, and stray anxieties expose unconscious motives constantly leaking into the open. His talking cure invited patients to confess every image and impulse so that repression could be replaced with clarity. Privacy of mind, he argued, only feeds neurosis. Truth heals. His model turned secrecy itself into sickness. By mapping the id, ego, and superego, Freud built a system where no internal corner is inaccessible, just temporarily disguised. Today, algorithms and brain imaging experience follow similar logic. If you measure enough signals, you can read the self beneath masks. Freud's consulting room was the first laboratory of transparency, where the human soul became data. He wanted liberation, not exposure, but the idea that nothing stays private began there. Jean-Paul Sartre, born in Paris in 1905, turned observation into an existential microscope. In Being and Nothingness, he described the gaze, the moment we realize someone else is watching us, and we become an object in their world. That awareness shapes every action. For Sartre, privacy is an illusion. Even alone, we imagine the audience. He called it the look. Once we sense it, it locks us into constant self-presentation. His famous phrase, hell is other people, doesn't mean he hated company. It means we can't escape judgment. Identity lives in that back and forth between seeing and being seen. Sartre's insight echoes in today's social feeds, security footage, and performance culture. We curate instead of conceal. He warned that freedom requires owning the gaze, not fleeing from it. So our struggle isn't to recover privacy, but to stay authentic under permanent attention. Ayn Rand, born in 1905 in St. Petersburg, built a whole moral system on openness and pride. Her philosophy of objectivism rejected guilt, secrecy, and what she saw as the sham humility of altruism. In novels like The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, her heroes stand in public, unashamed of their ambitions. For Rand, authenticity meant complete transparency of motive. If an action is rational and self-earned, why hide it? Privacy often masked compromise or fear. The proper human being, she said, acts in daylight, visible, logical, unapologetic. Her ideas fueled debates over capitalism and individual rights, but they also seeded modern culture's obsession with self-branding and personal truth. Whether she foresaw it or not, Rand's call for proud exposure echoes across influencer culture where validation and visibility merge. She taught that morality hides in plain sight, and that concealment is a form of weakness.
Michel Foucault, born in France in 1926, revolutionized how we think about power. Instead of kings and laws ruling us from above, he said control seeps through everyday systems, schools, hospitals, armies, offices. In Discipline and Punish, 1975, he revived Bentham's Panopticon to show how surveillance became a habit, not a building. He argued that people internalize authority. Knowing we might be watched, we behave. That self-discipline, Foucault said, is the genius and danger of modern society. We've replaced whips and chains with cameras, rules, and self-monitoring. He called it disciplinary power, the quiet force that trains our bodies and minds. Foucault was fascinated, not purely horrified. Visibility creates order and knowledge, but also obedience. In a world of databases and social networks, his diagnosis reads like prophecy. He showed that privacy didn't vanish overnight, it was designed out of us slowly until exposure felt normal.
Marshall McLuhan, born in 1911 in Canada, believed technology doesn't just change what we do, it changes who we are. His phrase, "the medium is the message," captured that every new medium reshapes human perception. Radio made emotion public, television turned living rooms into stages, and the internet, he predicted, would dissolve distance altogether. He called this the global village, a world where information travels instantly and everyone sees everyone else. Privacy, he warned, would erode as communication became total. In the electric age, secrets can't survive speed. McLuhan wasn't condemning it so much as describing an inevitable shift. As tools connect us, identities fuse into networks. Today's live streams and comment sections prove his point. Every notification and post extends his vision of a world with no private corners. Endless conversation, no silence.
Donna Haraway, born in 1944 in Denver, brought playfulness to radical theory. In her Cyborg Manifesto, 1985, she said humans, machines, and networks had already merged. The old lines between body and technology, male and female, public and private, no longer held. The cyborg wasn't science fiction. It was us, wired and datafied. For Haraway, that fusion could free us from rigid categories, but it also meant that identity now lived through circuits and screens rather than in secluded minds. Privacy, once a shield, became unnecessary baggage of a pre-digital age. Her ideas seeded cyber-feminism and digital humanism, influencing everyone from tech theorists to AI ethicists. In Haraway's future, and our present, the personal self dissolves into code, conversation, and collective intelligence. The wall between what's inside and what's shared is gone, and she suggests we might learn to live comfortably without rebuilding it.
Jean Baudrillard, born in France in 1929, believed modern life had crossed from reality into endless reflection. In classic works like Simulacra and Simulation, he argued that we no longer live in truth versus lies, but in a sea of images about images. When everyone performs for a lens, privacy isn't hidden, it's irrelevant. He said we inhabit hyper-reality, models of life so convincing that the line between private and public disappears. Fame and anonymity fuse. Selfies or reality shows are proof of what he called the ecstasy of communication, the state where nothing remains unseen because being unseen no longer matters. Baudrillard didn't design this world, he diagnosed it. His warning lingers in our feeds. Once exposure itself becomes pleasure, secrecy loses meaning. For him, privacy didn't die by force. It evaporated in our craving to appear. Mark Poster, born 1941 in New York, was one of the first scholars to treat digital identity as a new historical condition. His book, The Second Media Age, 1995, predicted that computers and the internet would transform subjectivity into pure information flow. We no longer own our identity, he said. We perform it through login screens and databases. Poster argued that online interaction makes everyone both publisher and product, erasing the distance that older media preserved. The I becomes a profile stitched together from texts, clicks, and code. Privacy, in that sense, isn't under attack. It's technically impossible. He saw this as both democratic and dangerous. Liberation from gatekeepers, but dependence on visibility to exist at all. Every time we post to prove we're real, we confirm Poster's thesis that the digital self lives only in public space.
Shoshana Zuboff, born in 1951 in the United States, mapped the economic engine behind surveillance. In the Age of Surveillance Capitalism, 2019, she showed how tech giants turned personal data into their main commodity, the raw resource for prediction and control. She documented how every search, click, or route becomes part of what firms call behavioral surplus, feeding algorithms that guess and shape what we'll do next. Zuboff doesn't celebrate privacy's death, she exposes the profit motive sustaining it. But her research makes one truth visible. The market rewards total transparency. Under her lens, privacy isn't a default human right anymore, it's an economic luxury, something we must fight to buy back. Whether or not we win, Zuboff's work shows how Bentham's all-seeing eye has become a trillion-dollar business model.
Yuval Noah Harari, born in 1976 in Israel, bridges history, technology, and futurism. In books like Homo Deus and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he describes how data is replacing divine judgment. Algorithms, not gods, now decide what we read, buy, love, and even believe. He calls this new worldview dataism, faith in the flow of information above human privacy or emotion. Harari warns that constant biometric tracking will soon know you better than you know yourself. Heartbeat monitors, cameras, and browsing histories reveal desires faster than introspection can. Once technology predicts our choices more accurately than our minds do, he says privacy ceases to have purpose. He doesn't praise that world, he pleads for awareness. When comfort and convenience make us surrender inner life to data, freedom doesn't vanish overnight. It dissolves quietly into efficiency.
Nick Bostrom, born in Sweden in 1973, studies the far edge of technology where machines might overtake humanity. Founder of Oxford's Future of Humanity Institute, he's known for analyzing existential risks, especially artificial intelligence. In essays and in Superintelligence, he asks what happens when systems collect and process every scrap of human behavior to optimize survival. A truly super smart AI, he notes, couldn't operate safely without near total surveillance. To predict harm, it must track everything. Privacy might be morally expendable if it saves civilization. Bostrom's simulation hypothesis adds another twist. If our universe is itself observed by higher intelligences, then total transparency isn't future, it's our condition. He doesn't urge surrender, but preparation, reminding us that the price of perfect safety or omniscient intelligence could be permanent observation.